Of people's mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic is emerging as a real concern for many people, their families and friends. And many South Africans working from home are also juggling work pressure in addition to homeschooling children, among other things. And the financial uncertainty coupled with the pervasive sense of work isolation is also exacerbated by restrictions on movement, making these times unprecedented on so many levels. And just how are we supposed to deal with all of these stresses? So to help us navigate this labyrinth, we have with us now Bryan Hattingh, who is founder of exponential leadership firm Cycan, to talk about some of this. Bryan, good morning. Thanks for speaking to us.
Cycan, good morning to you. Nice to see you.
So, with all of these pressures, and granted we've never been here before, but how do people deal with the impact that this lockdown has had on us? And it's caused so many stresses in the home work environment especially.
So if we start from the base where we were already in a space where stress levels were quite high, economy was struggling, many various global situations that people worried about. And along came COVID, and even more the threat of illness and disease, and then came the lockdown. And all of a sudden, so many different aspects of our lives that we're accustomed to were challenged or threatened. This causes a very substantial neurological response. Hearing that you're about to be retrenched has a similar neurological response to somebody, holding a gun to your head and threatening to kill you. And so we have to stop and step back for a second, because we've got so much coming at us. We've got huge volumes of content, which is all about COVID and what it means and what's caused it or hasn't caused it, tons of fake news. And we have to step back and say, this is content over here, and that is, and on the other side is context. And we have no control over the content. We have control over the context, which is the inner place from where we respond to these things. So it comes down to, very importantly, what are we focusing our energies and attention on when all of these things have been threatened? Our status has been threatened, our relatedness has been threatened, our certainty has been threatened, our autonomy, our ability to choose and make decisions has been threatened, and fairness. It's not fair. This is not fair, and not that life ever was promised to be fair. We have to take charge of it. And if you take examples of incredible people in history, Viktor Frankl being one of them, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. He was confined in the prison of war camps. Auschwitz was one of them. He lost his parents, he lost his brother, he lost his pregnant wife, all during that time. And he realized and established that having meaning and purpose in your life is critical to your survival. And so the challenge here is for each of the people out there, regardless of where you are, and it's not to in any way underplay or understate the severity of conditions that people find themselves in. But you have the choice to choose how you respond to it, and you have to respond to it in a way that enables you to rise above it. Otherwise, you become a casualty in that equation.
So, with that scenario that you've just sketched, Bryan, if someone literally does not have a piece of bread to eat today, as they're probably watching this and listening to you and I speak, where do they start? How do they start getting their mindset correct when they can't even think of where the next meal is going to come from?
It's a very good question, and I wish I had an instant snap answer to give them a solution. But in terms of the provision of food, that I can't do. But what I can say is that you've got a choice, which is, how do I go through this day? Now, some people can find solace in a theological or religious or spiritual way. Some people may not have that. They then have to dig deep inside of themselves to ask the question, what do I want for my life? Because you have to, regardless of your situation, whether that's in a state of COVID, whether you're in a state of stage 4 cancer, whether you're in whatever stage of crisis that you're in, you have the choice to give up, or you have the choice to fight through it, regardless of how insurmountable the odds are against you. You have the facility and the opportunity to rise above it. If we look at Madiba, what a great example of incarceration for 27 years, and he chose to survive through it in spite of all of those conditions. and exited to come out and take on the presidency of South Africa, which was long overdue. And so we no matter what our circumstances, we have the facility and ability to choose how to respond to it. And if you're starving, that's not easy. But if we look at it, we could turn that into an opportunity for people to somehow dig deeper and to push through. My heart goes out hugely to all of those who are in such a position, and I really hope that the system and that the world can respond and help in the way that it should.
Now, Bryan, right now, when it comes to retrenchments, and we've been speaking about that earlier on in the show, many people, unfortunately, facing this grim reality. And on the other hand, you have the executives of the companies who are now seen as the enemy number one. Those are the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs. And surely they must also be under immense stress and pressure to pay workers and to keep businesses afloat. How do executives deal with pressure that they are currently facing at this time?
It's a fantastic question. There are three categories of victims in this equation. There are the retrenchees, there are the survivors, i.e. the employees who remain on, who go through their own crisis of mixed emotions of guilt, of remorse, of anger, of fear that there might be another situation like it. And the managers who are expediting the retrenchments go through massive stress, even to the point of coming through it suffering from PSTD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And they too have to actually find a way to, and there are ways and there are mechanisms to work with it for people to take stock of themselves internally and the inner place from where they're coming from. The stress of being in that is so huge that people don't often stop to pause and breathe and step back and say, how am I dealing with this? What can I do differently? And how can I manage it and through this? So coaching is a great example of it. Therapy in certain instances where it might even move to a place where there needs to be clinical assistance can help. But certainly coaching and mentoring can be an assistance to that. But at the end of the day, the people, both the people exiting and the people remaining, have to be what I call match fit. You know, even if you're Ronaldo, if you're injured, you'll be on the bench. You won't be allowed to play on the field. And at the end of the day, right now, in order to thrive in these times, we've got to have hope. Hope is not just an emotional, feel-good emotion. It's actually a dynamic cognitive motivational system and skill that we can deploy to elevate ourselves and rise ourselves above it. Because if we don't show up, and it's how we show up, if we don't show up positively and authentically, we've got a chance of not actually winning the deal. So that the executives, most importantly, have to build into themselves in and through these times, and they need to find ways, and exercise is really important, ensuring they're sleeping, ensuring they're eating correctly, very baseline elements, but they're so important. They have to make sure that they're in match fit condition to lead the people that are inside of the organization and to help the survivors to move into a space of away from norming into being a high-performing team.
Bryan Hattingh, thanks so much for your time this morning, founder of exponential leadership firm Cycan, for helping us just talk through and navigate that balance of mental health during the lockdown.